Roger and Commando Association, and Mrs. Tonya McCaskill. Keith Hayes, veteran of 2nd Second. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's 12 months since we gathered here to pay homage to the men of the 2nd Second Independent Company, AIF, as it was known in those days. And the respect and pride we have for the unit has not diminished. A number of books, manuals and articles have been published about this group of Australian volunteers. A group which stood alone in Timor in the dark days of 1942. The most recent of these being Paul Cleary's The Men Who Came Out of the Ground, which I consider to be an accurate account of the happenings of that time. This was the first time Australian troops had engaged in this type of guerrilla warfare, and although well trained on Victoria's Wilson's promontory, the real thing was initially a learning curve for all ranks. Survival was to learn, so learn they did. Their task was made more difficult by the fact that in the general confusion following the capitulation of the bulk of Sparrow Force in Dutch Timor to a numerically superior Japanese force, including 650 paratroopers, the long-range radios were ordered destroyed, thus removing any contact the unit had with Darwin. Meanwhile, the 2nd Second were deployed throughout Portuguese Timor. The resultant story has been well documented, and as a result of their tenacity, skill and determination, a new type of soldier was born. Special Forces, some of whom we have with us today, and to whom we are forever grateful. But what of the families at home? Not only was the 2nd Second isolated from Australia, but their loved ones were left in the awful uncertainty of not knowing where, what, or why. Sydney Harbour had been violated by Japanese midget submarines. Darwin had been and was being bombed. Singapore had fallen, and most of the Australian 8th Division were prisoners of the Japanese force. Now was the time for Australian womanhood to come into its own. Their faith in their men, in their country, in themselves, and in their God brought them solace. It was their strength and their stoicism that united the families and kept the home fires burning. Theirs was a just reward when eventually contact was re-established with Darwin by the men of Timor with the poignant signal, force intact and still fighting. Stop. Badly need quinine, money, Tommy gun ammunition. And so the 2nd Second was resupplied, reinforced, and eventually returned to Australia in December 1942. Almost 12 months to the day since its arrival on Timor. The unit remained operational with distinguished service in New Guinea and New Britain and was disbanded in 1946. But the story continues with the formation of the 2nd Second Commando Association, an association based on mateship and camaraderie formed during the desperate days of 1942. Like the unit itself, this association, this band of brothers, has a special quality that can be best summed up by the old Australian adage, look after your mates. Who can forget the post-war involvement of the men of the unit who, after wooing and winning the then Liberal federal government's financial support, erected a rest house at Darray, complete with pool, a facility well utilised by the locals on their way to Dili or the various market villages. Who can forget the immediate response to the appeal made by the association to its members to assist in repairing the immense damage to Timorese life, limb and infrastructure caused by the Indonesian occupation? So many association members answered the call with generous donations of money and their own physical presence. Such was the obligation to the Timorese people who gave so much and who suffered so much. On a recent visit to Timor-Leste early this year, my wife Barbara and I were amazed at the rugged beauty of the hill country and all its physical challenges, and were in awe, thinking of the hazards of engaging an enemy in conditions of extreme topographical difficulty. Not much has changed in the hill country since 1942, and infrastructure, such as good roads, etc., remain a distant hope. Education has, however, taken a firmer hold, and many schools have opened and are seemingly well attended. The Australian military presence is conspicuous and very popular, and its headquarters are in Sparrow Force Building, adjacent to the old airport, the scene of the unit's initial contact with the enemy. The hill country people remain trusting, happy and loyal, as they were in those dark days of 1942. It is our hope that they will soon see Timor-Leste as a land of peace, opportunity and prosperity, and we pray that this will be so. Thank you.